Hi friends, thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm really excited for this interview, and I have my mother-in-law to thank for helping me discover our guest today. My mother-in-law sent me a link to the graduation speech by Kelsey O'Connor and suggested that I reach out to her. And when I listened to Kelsey's speech, I was so touched and inspired and absolutely agreed with my mother-in-law that I needed to reach out. So I'm very grateful that Kelsey responded and is here to share with us her experience and some of her wisdom. Kelsey is a motivational speaker, former Division I softball player, and recent graduate from North Carolina State University. After recovering from multiple head injuries, Kelsey delivered a commencement speech that went viral and now travels the country in hopes of helping and sharing her story with others. So this is perfect. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Kelsey. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad that your mother-in-law sent you my speech too, and I'm so glad that we connected.
Yes, me too. I love it. So let's just start out with you telling us a little bit more about you. Where are you from? What do you love? Tell us everything.
Yeah, I'm from Naperville, Illinois, so a suburb of Chicago, and I love my family so much. I love talking about my family. It's a huge part of who I am, and grew up in Naperville until I went to college in Raleigh. So
amazing. So, and who's in your, how many siblings do you have? What is your family like?
Yeah, so I have two brothers. I have a twin brother and an older brother who's 7 years older. Super close with both of them. And my mom and my dad live in Raleigh too. And then when I say my family, I also have a pretty large extended family, and I include all of them as well: cousins, aunts, uncles, all of them.
That is awesome. Did you grow up near them in Naperville?
Actually, no. So just a few of my cousins lived in Chicago, but everyone else is kind of scattered. I have a lot of family in the Philadelphia area, some family in Nashville, so kind of all over.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, we have a lot more in common. We were talking a little bit before this and discovered that I lived in Naperville as well for a little bit. So we lived in Naperville at the same time, probably, actually. And then I grew up in Delaware, so near Philly, and then in Nashville too. So I love it. And I have 5 brothers, and I love my brothers so much. So there's a lot of good things in common here.
Oh, that's so cool.
Really fun. So let's have you tell us about your injury and how long ago was it? What happened? What kind of symptoms were you dealing with?
Yeah, so the injury that I talk about the most, it happened in October 2021. So I was a junior NC State at the time, and it happened during practice. So I was base running. I was running from first to second base, and our coach hit the ball to the pitcher, so our shortstop was coming through to turn a double play. And so as I was sliding into second base, kind of routine, our shortstop usually makes a lane on either side of the base path, but came straight through. And so as I was sliding in, she, full momentum, went straight into my face, knee first. And so that's how that injury happened. And it was pretty instant. I think it's kind of a blur, and yet it's so slow at the same time. It was a head and a neck and a jaw injury all at once. And so pretty immediately, I when I talk about the symptoms, and I'm sure you can understand this, really breaking it into physical, emotional, and cognitive, the pain itself, the symptoms and the pain were brutal. It was almost every step I was taking when I was walking, I felt like there was a gong inside my head, just so much shooting pain, throbbing pain, aching pain, pain in my face from my jaw, my neck,
Was this
Um,
like just immediately afterwards, or was that continual?
Pretty immediately. It was continual for a couple months, but it started right away. And I think I pretty much knew in that moment that it was pretty severe. But to kind of give some context, I had multiple concussions before, which I'll probably we'll probably talk about too. But
Mhm.
I knew what they felt like. And because I had had so many, I think it made this one worse. But I also think I knew that this one was worse. I had experienced concussions before, but I had never really experienced some of the cognitive symptoms that I did when I had this last injury playing softball. I really struggled a lot with forgetfulness and just in a very constant state of confusion. I had a late onset stutter, so I was struggling to articulate my thoughts and my words. A lot of brain fog, forgetting my address or getting lost in places that were familiar, and just some really scary stuff in that sense. And then just personality changes, emotional outbursts, and I had been irritable before when I had concussions, and my family had known so specifically to like look out for those things, and they had seen it before. But I think this one was so different because I really didn't feel or act like the same person. And so it was that whole trifecta, I guess you could say, of symptoms with this particular injury that were really tough.
Yeah, I thank you for bringing all of those up, because I think some of those things people don't recognize or don't realize that all of those things can be related. And it's interesting that you can have had multiple concussions and it can look differently and feel differently every time, especially if they've built up. And I'm curious a little bit about the late onset stutter. Was that, tell us more about that. What did that look like?
It was so weird. I mean, I still sometimes try to do research on it, or I ask doctors and neurologists that I talk to now about concussions because I'm trying to understand it myself. But it was probably like 6 weeks after my injury, I could notice it a little bit. My family started to notice it, and it just kind of progressed. And I mean, I can't really like even explain, but it was just presenting itself more and more in the way I was talking to my family, and just anytime I was talking to them, I was stuttering and stumbling over my words, but it wasn't immediate. It was like very oddly gradual, and they started to notice it, and I started to do it more and more, and then it lasted a couple months where I was almost just felt like I was trapped a little bit in not being able to get my words out and really stumbling. But I don't know why it was late to come on. I don't know. I have no idea the science behind that or why that would happen. I feel kind of crazy sometimes when I talk about it because I really have no idea, but it was just really odd.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, because I do, again, that's one of the things that I want to point out, that things can show up later, like months later sometimes. It's crazy, and people, yeah, are like, wait, am I crazy? Is this real? Like, what is happening now? But the brain is so fascinating, and sometimes, yeah, it's not all immediate. Sometimes things do come on gradually, and so it's important to recognize that that is a possibility. And with the stutter, do you feel like that was related to other aphasia stuff? Like, was it hard to process what people were saying as well as getting what you wanted to say out?
Not necessarily.
Was that different?
I think it was separate. I don't know what's so interesting. I actually gave a talk recently to a nonprofit that works with individuals with aphasia. And when I started it, I told them I had never had aphasia, but I struggled with speaking. And the more I was telling them, some of the members were like, I think you had aphasia. And they're like, from what it sounds like, it seems as
Yeah.
though you can understand. And so I never thought of it that way. I didn't really struggle to process what other people were saying, but I was in a state of confusion. So I didn't feel like that was the case, but I definitely had trouble getting what was in my mind to like communicate out through my words. And I don't remember what kind of aphasia that is because I know there are multiple
Yeah,
kinds, types, but
remember either. But yeah,
I think, from having conversations even later now, which is so crazy, I think it could have been a little bit of that.
yeah, there's just so much going on, and it's, yeah, totally understandable that you're still figuring things out down the road. That, I think that's very common. So it sounds like you've had prior concussion experience. What was, yeah, maybe tell us a little bit about those if you want to, but also more like, what about this experience surprised you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just touch on the concussions before because it's so crazy. I had two back-to-back concussions my sophomore year of high school. And because they were back to back, one of them was whiplash. I was playing softball and I dove for a ball and I landed just really hard on my chest. And for whatever reason, my neck just whipped back and forth. And less than 6 months later, I was standing in a huddle for softball and our catcher ripped off her mask, but pretty forcefully. And it hit me on the side of the head. And I don't know why it was as severe as it was, but it ended up being second impact syndrome, post-concussion syndrome. And those symptoms took me out of softball for 4 months. I went back to playing early, and then it lasted even longer because I had gone back kind of early. I had nerve damage in my neck. I was struggling with double vision. And so all of those very physical concussion symptoms I had experienced before, and the pain and the nausea and all of those things. And so pretty ironically, I wrote my college essay to get into NC State about overcoming head injuries. And I had had a third one my senior year of high school. I was running to first base and I got clotheslined. And so I hit the first baseman's arm, landed on the ground, had a really brutal face injury. And so all of those things that happened in high school. And so it was truly, I think, added an emotional component to having such a severe head injury in college. And I had had one or two instances even throughout my freshman or sophomore year where I would, I don't know, run into somebody and they would put me in protocol because of my history. And I knew I didn't have one. And so we would get the symptom sheet and I was zeros down the board. I went back to playing right away because I just knew that I was fine, but we were taking more precaution. And so to have this really severe head, neck, jaw injury happen kind of right at the peak of my career and when I was getting started and all these things had happened before and I had been working so hard to finally get to this point. I think it really added a lot of emotional, just, I don't know, damage. And I just think it made it scarier because I wasn't sure if I was going to get better because you kind of start increasing the number of concussions you've had. And the discussion is, when does it become permanent damage? How many times can you get hit? Like I felt like I had this runway and I was getting to the end of like, when is it going to be too far that I've gotten hit too many times and have done this to myself and put myself in the situation to play softball, which I love. But also it seems kind of ridiculous that I'm still playing and I keep getting hit. And so there was a lot of embarrassment and fear and just this weird cycle of feeling like I had failed and I wanted to keep playing, but I couldn't keep playing because it was so severe and I wasn't even the same person. And this particular concussion just really did change my life. And when I had it, there was a lot going on with my softball program at the time. So it really wasn't handled with kindness at all. And my coaches and then some of my teammates and some administration, there had been a lot happening with mental health on our program right before I had gotten injured. And so I really felt like my injury was preventable for a couple of reasons. And that kind of made it worse. I felt like it was avoidable. And now all of a sudden I might have this permanent damage. And because it wasn't handled with kindness, because it was an invisible injury, like as I was moving home and I was starting to fail my classes because I had gotten some extensions from professors, but I was reaching that point where I'd either have to drop out of the semester or I was failing and really trying to just get my life together. I was seeing 6 different doctors. I was now with my mom at home, 15 minutes from campus. And my teammates and my coaches were just impatient and starting to tell me that I was being selfish for taking so long. They didn't understand that I was being dramatic and I should have been back by now if I wanted to work hard. And I think that was the hardest part is all I wanted to do was be better and to work hard. And I'd obviously put all that time and intention into playing. And so to want something so bad and then to be told by people that I really loved and had spent so much time with and put my heart into for a couple of years now, to be told that I didn't want it and I was being selfish and dramatic during this time of really intense pain, I think it just added to the whole situation. And so when I had to ultimately medically retire and stop playing, it wasn't really just softball that I was losing. I lost my abilities. I lost a lot of my community. My friends didn't really speak to me anymore. My coaches handled it really poorly. And so that entire system of my life and attachment to NC State was pretty much gone.
And that would have been huge. Like, I imagine that was a huge part of that experience. Your college experience was the softball and having all of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I mean, I think it didn't help that the year before was COVID. And so even that balance that you get outside of a sport when you're playing in college and classes and other friends or other groups, that had really been cut off the year before because it was just home, softball field home, because we were being tested and we needed to be healthy to play. And so everything had zeroed in to softball and all of my hours were spent there. And so to kind of spend a whole year and a half zeroed in on softball, only those people, only that environment, to then have it be cut off. And it also is intertwined with your childhood dream and everything your parents have spent their time and effort on. And I felt like I was letting them down. And it's just so intertwined with so many things up to your life that so far. And so yeah, it was definitely life-changing in that way all at once.
Yeah, thank you. I think you articulated that really beautifully, and I appreciate you. I mean, you brought things up that I hadn't even really considered. There's just so much to it, but yeah, the dreams and the parents' effort and time into it, like, and the failure, feeling like you're a failure, the embarrassment, as well as all of like just everything you said. The loss of all the things. There's so many so many points that I would love to like pull out of this, and so the next kind of general question that I was planning on asking is how your life changed following concussion. I think you've explained some of that, but like, how did you decide to go ahead and medically retire? Like, how did that decision come about?
Oh, yeah, that's such a good question. It was gradual and abrupt at the same time. It was tough because softball's technically a non-contact sport. And so it just shocks everyone that I've had so many injuries and I have to like explain that this has happened through softball. But I think in those first, I would say initial few weeks when I was seeing a neurologist, a physical therapist, I was seeing an oral surgeon, orthodontist, just all different kinds of doctors, and they were all kind of just leaning me towards medical retirement. And then the neurologist specifically was just explaining that I really could have permanent damage from this injury. And if I went back, then I could have even worse damage. And so at that point, it's not even a decision if I'm going to risk my brain health or if I'm going to play softball. And so those conversations were happening pretty early on, but because of some of the mental health issues and the things that I was advocating for through the softball program, I was trying to just kind of stay on the team for my teammates and for my friends. And also, to be honest, I just wasn't ready to let go. Before my teammates had kind of started saying those things and doing those things, like I just was clinging on to this environment that I was a part of. I didn't want to let it go. And so it was pretty clear that I needed to medically retire probably 2 weeks after the injury when I was seeing all the doctors and they were explaining to me that the outcome would be very severe and it might even already be permanent damage. And so I decided that I would medically retire very soon after the injury, but was staying on my team for a few weeks and also a little bit delusional, like maybe I'll heal miraculously and I'll come back. Like, I don't know. It was just swirling with all of those things. And I think after more time and after like 6 or 7 weeks of not getting better, not seeing any progress, I knew that I was going to medically retire that year. But then when the environment got so bad and was really dangerous for my mental health and my recovery, I mean, it was just brutal. I just realized that I was already going to medically retire and now is probably the time to leave this whole situation on the team and everything. So my decision to medically retire was early, but my decision to leave softball and leave my team probably took like a month, 2 months after the injury. So it was really weird how gradual and abrupt it was at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And do you feel like it was in some ways a relief and in some ways still really hard? Like how was it when you actually did make that call?
Yeah, the day that I left, I felt a lot of relief. And I think that was from knowing that I was making a decision to keep myself safe in every aspect. Like, I think it took this weight off of me to really let go of putting myself in these situations and like risking my body over and over because I just been through so much at that point physically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that instant relief wore off and it was just really sad and really hard to let go of this dream and this goal that I'd had for so long. And I think I felt the just sorrow and sadness from that for multiple months. I would say like it probably took 6 months, probably more than that, to really get over it. because I was also on campus and living with two of my teammates. And so they were going to practice every day. And the softball field is right on the central part of campus, right next to the student union. So I was around them and around this experience that was moving on without me. And so I think that made it a lot harder because I wasn't removed from it. I was right there watching it happen. And so, yeah, it took a long time to really let that go. And I think I'd probably say headed into my senior year, I started reaching out and making new friends. I love telling this story, but I ended up meeting some friends on Facebook. My parents were encouraging me to meet some friends on Facebook because I was fully isolated. I wanted to move home, wanted to be done with NC State as quickly as possible. I mean, I was just checked out. And I ended up meeting these two girls on Facebook, and they really just invited me to things and just were so accepting, and they weren't judgmental of my facial injuries and my, personality differences. And they were so wonderful. And I think that really helped me to heal from letting go of that part of NC State and trying to step into a new chapter at NC State. But I didn't meet them for 8 months after my injury. And so it took some time.
Yeah. What kind of support? Oh, one, I love that you found good people and good friends to help with that transition eventually. Like that does, community makes a big difference, that connection piece. But was there anything in particular that helped you get through it? Like, were you seeing a therapist or doing anything? Yeah, I'd really be interested in hearing along those lines, but specifically, but also just in general, what kinds of therapies and treatments you tried that you found to be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's such a good question. Definitely saw a therapist, saw a sports psychologist, but then I also decided to seek out an external therapist because I wanted it to be just removed from sports. And she was so fantastic. So I was doing some cognitive behavioral therapy and just talk therapy, which was so necessary and so helpful just for me to even process out loud and like grieve softball and that whole chapter of life before fully moving on. Like, I feel like because I felt it all the way through, it made my healing so much more authentic and full because I had like allowed myself to feel it all the way through. I also did occupational therapy and physical therapy. And I think occupational therapy was the most helpful. One, because it's like the little tasks. And so I think where you have a spoon and you're trying to focus on a spoon with a metronome, or you're doing vision exercises and hand-eye coordination exercises. And I think one, it's very validating to realize that very small skills and abilities that you had are now altered. And so it can be validating to kind of see yourself struggle through that and realize that you do have symptoms to work through, and it's measurable because those very easy daily tasks become very hard. And at the same time, it's really nice to see your progress throughout that and then get back to that daily ability to read and to speak clearly and to, catch a ball or walk without pain or jog without pain, and just those very little things to see that progress over time. I think occupational therapy was incredibly helpful in that sense. So yeah, I was very lucky and very blessed. I saw every therapist that I probably had access to and could, because I just knew that I needed the help and I needed other people. And I think with a concussion too, it's so difficult because a lot of it falls on you and your ability to articulate what you're feeling. And so I think having other people around you, to, just validate your experiences or ask you questions like, are you feeling this? And you're like, yes, I am. How did you even know to ask me that? Just mentally, physically progressing through that journey with you is so helpful. Makes such a difference.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. It is, when people have mentioned that they've had a concussion, or it's a recent thing, I'm like, okay, find somebody that understands concussions, please. Because like you said, that it does make a really big difference if they know what to ask, they know they understand what you're dealing with so that they can help support in the ways that are actually helpful. So that's, I think, really important and helpful too for them to help you see the wins that you're making, like the progress that is really important too. Thank you for sharing all of that. How about as far as the neck and the jaw injury? I know those are things that, our listeners may be dealing with as well. Was there anything in particular that helped with those, or did you get specific help separate from what you were already doing with the concussion? Like how did that play out?
Yeah, so with the jaw injury, I had gone to the dentist first right away because I could feel some popping and just a lot of pain in my jaw. And they were like, you might have a potential fracture, dislocation. And so The options were either oral surgery or braces. And I had seen the oral surgeon first, and he said that I could try to go to an orthodontist. And when I went to my orthodontist, I love my orthodontist. I showed up to my orthodontist office, and I was an emotional mess. Like I didn't want to get braces put back on. I was 20 years old. Like I was already upset, but he was so fantastic. He basically said that I could do braces and some springs and screws to move my jaw without having to do surgery. It would just be a little bit longer. But that he could probably fix the pain with the braces and fix my bite because everything was just off. And they did, and they were so empathetic and so amazing. Like my orthodontist started tearing up with me. He was feeling it with me. He was like, "I'm so sorry this is happening to you. We're going to help you as much as we can." And they were so wonderful. And I got them put on right away because my goal was to have them off before graduation. And I ended up getting them off 2 days before I graduated.
I was going to say, your speech, you didn't have them on, so it must have worked.
2 days before. They were so empathetic the whole time. They really wanted to just help me. And so orthodontia was great for helping me with my jaw pain. And I didn't realize that having braces and then I just had some screws and springs that were moving things would help with TMJ and help with a lot of those jaw issues. I didn't realize that those could be fixed with braces. So that was really great.
That was interesting. I didn't know that either. Super.
Yeah. And then as far as the neck issues, I had already had nerve damage from my first concussions in high school. And so it flared up a lot with the injuries. And I was really scared of injections, which were a potential option. I don't know, it freaks me out. And so I did a lot of physical therapy to strengthen some of the muscles in my back and some of my just posture, and just really tried to do everything holistically just because that's what I wanted to do, and stretches and things like that. And so it ended up healing pretty well. It's one of the things that I still struggle with a little bit, but for the most part, I think just stretching and physical therapy, it seems so mundane to do really tiny exercises, but it ended up helping me a lot over the long term. And then I didn't have to take some of the medications I didn't want to take for that particular issue, and I didn't have to get injections, and I was able to heal naturally. It just took a longer time and took trying out different things that worked for me.
Yeah. Awesome. I think you're a really good example of like taking it down to the basics, working on those basics in like the OT stuff that you mentioned, and like basic like daily living things, as well as the physical therapy for the neck, as well as the braces, like doing the smaller, like breaking it down to what can help at the micro level, and then that builds up and has a longer term like benefit, and you can like heal and fix things. And it may take a little bit longer, but it's a really good option. So I think that's really cool. I like that that's been helpful for you. And
thank you.
Really interesting. So thank you for sharing all of that. That's cool.
Of course.
How did your injury affect the people closest to you? Now I know you mentioned your like some of the teammates and stuff. Oh wait, hold on, really fast. I just have to also bring out what a powerful impact the empathetic orthodontist had on you. I love that so much.
Yes, I know.
I think that's the sort of thing, but I just think it's so like, I hope that people listening can just know, like, you like lending a kind of listening ear, like, can make all the difference for somebody. Like, it's just, that's really beautiful. Like, it wasn't necessarily who you would expect, but they had a big impact. So that's really beautiful. Anyway, so how did your injury impact the people closest to you, and what was that experience like for you and them?
Yeah, this is such a good question because it took a toll on my family for sure. And for them, I was really lucky because my dad had moved to Raleigh. My mom had just moved like 15 minutes from campus. My older brother had moved. So they had all just kind of gotten around me right before the injury. And so I was able to stay in school because of them and because of their support and being right there. But because of that, they were also there every step of the way. And I think the hardest part for them was seeing the emotional toll that it had taken on me, and to see me as so capable and vibrant and doing so well in school and working towards my goals as an athlete. And then all of a sudden, I am not the Kelsey that they know at all. I mean, I am drained and sad, and I'm not even speaking the same. My personality is just really dull because I just am confused, and I'm also numbing everything. But then there's also some times where there's paranoia and there's anxiety and just these weird things that are affecting me. And so for them, I think it was just I don't even know how to articulate. It was so hard for them to watch, and it really makes them emotional to watch also my support system at school fall apart, because I think they understand too that it was such a blessing that they were there to drive me everywhere, to sit with me when, I mean, I was just crying, or I was trying to, my goal started out super small. It was like getting out of bed before this time, making sure I made it to my therapy appointments and physical therapy appointments, and making sure I passed school, and even just not crying in a single day. And that sounds so sad, but that was like the reality for me and for them to watch. And there was really only so much that they could do because time just had to do its job. And so I think they felt so helpless, and they were trying to research diets that I could try that would help my brain, and books that they could read, and different therapies. And they were trying so much to take control and help me, but there's only so much they could do. And it was just really difficult for them to watch and just let time progress the same way I was trying to just let time do its job too.
Yeah.
And so I just have so much empathy for loved ones, because I think it just takes time and compassion and patience. And I know it was hard for them to stay patient when I was just not myself, and over a long period of time. And so even for them, they didn't have experience with long-term symptoms of concussion. So they're confused at why I'm not getting better after 4 or 5 months, and if I'm going to be the same, and how that's going to look for them. And so, yeah, I just have so much empathy for how much it impacted them too, emotionally, mentally, all of those things.
There's so many unanswered questions, especially as you're like in the midst of it, just not knowing how long it's going to last, or all of that. That is so hard. And I love that I think some of the things that you mentioned that they did are some of the things that I hear consistently when people say, I ask people what their advice is for the loved ones. And a lot of times it's just listen, like just believe me and try to, support as possible with like driving and stuff like that. But also the fact that they were like researching and trying to learn about it with you and for you and advocate for you. I think sounds like they did a beautiful job, but it would be so hard. And are there other things like what advice do you have for loved ones and people who are trying to support and love someone dealing with a concussion?
Yeah, they did do such a beautiful job. And they had seen me go through concussions before, so they were even like new territory for them. But I love that you said, like, believe me, because I think that's the biggest advice that I could give, because I did have people in my corner that didn't believe me. And I think that was really crushing. But I also was very blessed because I had a lot of people who did. And they just, when I could muster up the strength to tell them what was going on in my brain and try my best to communicate that with them, for them to believe me was so life-changing, and really the most important thing I think a loved one could do. Because you like, when you have a concussion, like, it takes a lot of courage to say, this is what's going on in my brain and I have no idea why, and nobody else can see it on your face. Like, they don't know what's going on inside your brain. So to just believe somebody, like, I don't think there's any harm in just taking someone for their word and believing them and trying to help them through it in that way. I would say that advice would just, like, even if you don't understand it, even if you can't see it, even if it looks like they're fine, if they're telling you that that's how they're feeling or that's what they're worried about, like, just believe them and hold a space for them. And you don't always have to try to fix it right away. You could just let them process out loud and sit with them and walk with them. And that is also good enough too.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I think it is so validating, because sometimes the person who's dealing with the concussion isn't sure if they believe themselves. Like they're like, am I crazy? Like, is this actually happening? And so
Yes.
it can be very validating to have someone like, okay, yes, I believe that what you're experiencing, even if you're not sure how to express it or what's going on, like, let's work on this together. I'm in your corner. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that too, like, just sitting with them, because you're so right. When you have it, sometimes you're like, am I crazy? Did I do this to myself? Am I creating this for myself? Like, it's a spiral of confusion and self-confusion. And even one of the things that my mom did, and my doctors always recommended me keeping a symptom journal. But having a concussion, there was no way I was going to keep any sort of routine, any sort of journal. That was just not going to happen, even if I tried. And so my mom helped me do that, and really would sit with me and ask me and go through the list of symptoms that were on my concussion card or symptom card. And then that was very validating to look back at. Or when I had an appointment and they asked me on a scale of 1 to 10, how have you been feeling? For me to have a physical paper. Yeah, let me look at how I was feeling. Because otherwise, I don't even know how I was feeling. I don't know what number to give you because what's my pain tolerance and what am I creating? And it's that whole spiral. And so you're absolutely right. Just someone to sit with you and walk through that with you.
I think that's really cool that she helped. That's an idea I hadn't really thought of, but a really like concrete way that somebody, a support person can help is to ask those questions and help you keep track of things. Like that's really actually cool. And I know there are apps that can help with that, with like symptom tracking and figuring those things out. But sometimes you're probably right. I imagine it would still be helpful to have somebody else be the one to instigate it. Like, okay, I'm going to help you take care of, like, fill this out today and you have access to it, but let's like make sure that this is happening regularly. I think
Yeah.
good ideas. I like it. So I want to ask about, if you don't mind sharing, because I'm excited to go into what you talked about in your speech and more about that. But I kind of want to just, if it's okay for you to share with us more about like that emotional piece and how you worked through this. And maybe you're still working through it and that's totally fine. But especially the concept of like dealing with feeling like it was avoidable and probably the anger that I'm guessing tell me if I'm wrong, but I've talked to other people who have felt like this was done to them and it didn't have to happen. And like that adds a whole other layer, I imagine. And then also I would love to hear about how you deal with people, or like what advice you have for dealing with people who don't understand and aren't willing to give you the time to understand it. So both of those things, I think that maybe they play into each other, maybe they're separate, but I would love to hear your experience and how you worked through that or are working through it.
Yeah, they do. I'm happy when you ask these questions because sometimes there's just so much to share. I don't even know where to start, but absolutely, I can definitely give some context around that. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of backstory. So essentially, heading into my junior year, and this is just why I felt like it was avoidable, we had been having a lot of issues with our coaching staff and treatment, and they were later let go a year and a half later for alleged abuse, but essentially a lot of these things were happening. And so we had half of our team transfer, cut, quit. And so we were kind of starting fresh. And the hope was that it was going to be a more positive year. We were going to turn it around. And then at the start of that year, it was as worse as it had been. There were a lot of issues. I tried to go to my coaching staff directly. It was a little bit difficult because our head coach and our assistant coach were married. And so it was just a little bit difficult to get through to them. And when you went to them with direct issues, they wouldn't speak to you. They would kind of belittle you. It was just a lot of things going on. And so I had gone to our administration with our sports psychologist and our athletic trainer who were seeing the same things, because at this point, I'm so close with my teammates. I mean, we spend every day together. We eat dinner together. We do homework together. And personally, like, I was really close with a lot of them. They would reach out to me with their struggles, or we would talk about really deep emotional things because I just am always one for those conversations. And a lot of my closest friends are starting to tell me that they aren't going to survive the fall, or they're not going to make it through, or they're rating 2 out of 10s on their mental health surveys. And so some really alarming things that they're sharing. And so I am consulting with our trainer. She's saying the same thing. She's like, someone needs to talk about it. And so I end up going to our administration and I asked them for player meetings to meet with us and to come to us, because a lot of the girls are too scared to come to them. And they said they don't really think that they can make that happen, but they can observe some practices and whatnot. And they said that it would be anonymous, but my coaches found out that I had gone to them, and pretty immediately, I mean, weren't speaking to me, just screaming. I was being treated very differently and very harshly. And so I went to my coaches directly and I basically addressed it face on. And I asked, is this going to be an issue? I did go to administration. This is why I asked for meetings. It is not to get you fired. Like, it is to really talk this out and try to improve the culture. Do I need to transfer? Is this going to work out? Let me know, because I was going to start that season. And they basically told me I was projecting, that I was making things up in my head. I was making it harder for myself than it needed to be. Like, I would start, my numbers were good. I needed to stop having this like paranoia and attitude problem, and I was crazy. And at that point I was like, okay, like, I really want to play my career. And so I'm going to keep advocating for this thing. And I just want to see it change. I didn't know what I wanted, but I just wanted to see it change. I wasn't trying to out them. And I was trying to have this direct conversation with them. And so then fast forward 3 weeks, I'm still being treated terribly at practice. And during the practice that I was injured, half of our team was running and half of our team was in the field, and I was running. And so everyone's running. And then they subbed every player out but me. And so I'm continuing to run. And then I get hit. And when I get hit, my coach laughs and is like, "Good job, shortstop. Like, let's move on." And I walked off the field entirely by myself until my trainer saw. And then the very next morning, I get called into their office at 7 a.m. and they're throwing at me, you could have permanent damage. And I don't know, it was a terrible meeting. It was a terrible conversation. And so all of that in the mix was just a lot leading up to it. And I think what made it feel so preventable was, one, that they could have been honest with me those 3 weeks before and said, "We have an issue with you and we're never going to get through that. We're never going to get past that." And instead of telling me that I was crazy and that I was still going to start, I'm still the same Kelsey, because before that we'd had a great relationship. Like, they were always like, "You're everything this program represents. You're a daughter. We love you." And so I had no reason to really feel like it was going to be this bad, because we had a good relationship prior, even though I had seen it play out with some other girls. And I don't know, I just wasn't seeing what I wanted to see. And so essentially that happens, and I know I'm going to medically retire, but I continue to go to administration and just explain to them, because other girls are also being screamed at for their weight or their stupidity or and there's a difference between tough coaching and true issue. And then administration tells me that it's a personal problem, that I should get over it. Why do I even play? And so I just personally felt like it was preventable. One, because I was the only player not subbed out, so I'm running for an hour before I get hit. Number two, just to be put in that situation, and it just could have been avoided with communication that I was trying so desperately to have, like adult communication about all of this. And then fast forward through those first few weeks, my teammates are coming to my house. They're asking, checking in on me. And I was going to visit the locker room every day that I could when I was going to get treatment. So I was leaving them little notes in their locker, and I was trying to visit them, but I wasn't really telling them all about my appointments because I didn't want to complain to them. But I was visiting them all the time. And I would watch their games from the parking garage, and I would text them and trying to stay involved. And then essentially my coaches met with a group of my teammates, and the very next day I'm getting cussed out by them. They're telling me I'm selfish, telling me I'm dramatic. So I hold this team meeting where I'm explaining to them that I'm with 6 different doctors, I'm failing school, I've had multiple concussions before, and just explaining to them, I'm sorry if me withholding was confusing to you, so let me lay it all on the line for you. And half of them that were newer had my back and were saying that this is ridiculous. Why is she up here defending herself? But then the other half that was mostly compiled of people that I've been playing with for 3 years, and the ones that asked me to go to administration all of a sudden didn't have my back at all. And so here I was trying to advocate for them, and then as soon as I was in pain, they were way too scared to say anything, and then kind of deny that they had told me to go to administration, they had begged me and read my emails and all these other things. And then the very next day, there was this leadership committee that was made of the exact girls that had totally just had it out for me. And it was just a weird situation. And so all of that, these sisters that I loved and had come to my house 3 days before, hugging me and telling me that they were sorry. And even girls that were completely silent while I was getting just berated, are then texting me how awful it was, but they didn't even say anything when I was up there kind of pouring my heart out a little bit. And so it was just a lot of confusion around my friends and feeling like I was trying so hard to advocate for their pain. And then all of a sudden, I am spiraled down into the worst pain I've ever known in my life. I am now emotionally, mentally on the brink of just exhaustion. And at this point, when I decide to leave, my mental health, to be totally honest with you, I was focused on my recovery a little bit later, but I wasn't really eating. I was oversleeping. I mean, just tough emotional sadness, depression, all of those things. And that's why my family was really essential, because I was almost in self-destruction mode. I was like, I'm done. I don't have any friends anymore. My dream's gone. And also your emotions are heightened because of a head injury. And I was angry. I felt like I had really given my whole heart to this program and had been so honest that I was so committed to it and I loved it and I was trying to help it improve and I was just trying to help the environment to be better. And because they weren't honest with me when they could have been, now I might have permanent brain damage. And all of a sudden, like it doesn't just impact my softball career, because my softball career is so minimal at this point, but because you didn't have the honesty to just tell me that we had an issue and you were going to run me over and over and over, and for administration to say, well, you have a personal problem, now all of a sudden I'm dealing with lifelong repercussions of that for something so kind of small. And so I think that's where a lot of the anger was. And essentially, fast forward a little bit, so I was continuing to meet with administration because I wasn't going to let it go. And I think for me personally, it was one of those things where even if it wasn't impacting me anymore, I just kind of hit a point where if I was so passionate about it before, just because those people had hurt me doesn't mean that they deserve to keep being hurt by the environment they were in. And I was so passionate about it before, why would I lose that afterwards? And just having it stay something so important to me. And so I was removed from it for a little while. But what's really so beautiful is that ended up playing itself out. And I ended up getting a personal apology when I gave the speech at NC State. I wasn't bringing it up. I was trying just so hard to really help improve the situation. And they came up to me and were like, we're very sorry and we want to make this better. And I'm actually helping NC State build a sports social work program and advocate for mental health resources and put more mental health resources into the athletic department. And so it's been this kind of 3-4 years of it playing out as a very full circle moment, but also something that kind of was able to turn some anger into just some really trying to be passionate about it and maintain how important it is on my heart, even though it's not affecting me anymore. So that's my very long answer. I don't know if that answers your question. Sorry, that was so long.
That's really cool, and brings up some really interesting things, because I think I didn't play any sports at a level like you have, but I think a lot of people who deal with concussions do and have, and so I imagine your story is not unique, and so I think that's probably really important to have that out there, and really cool that you were able to kind of channel that anger into something that was going to be productive and helpful for people. And how, do you have any insights or thoughts on how, I imagine feelings of betrayal probably came up as well. It just sounds like it was so close and then so many things just kind of fell apart. And I know that, everybody's dealing with their own things, hurt people. So we want to give grace as much as we can, but it's still, how did you deal with that, that part of it yourself? And what advice do you have for people who are in it with people like teachers or classmates or others who don't understand
brain
don't
injury?
Understand what you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
First let's focus on how did you emotionally work through those feelings of I see you channeled the anger partially, how did you work through the anger, the betrayal, all of the hurt that comes along with that, and work through that?
Yeah, a lot of it is my faith really got me through my injury completely, and that's pretty much the biggest reason why I feel like I healed and kept hope and made it through all that. And so some of that was my family also just really helping me to find forgiveness. And forgiveness not in the sense that I have to go tell them I forgive them and we're good, but forgiveness in the sense that I wasn't going to celebrate, when they were ultimately let go, it wasn't me celebrating that something bad had happened to these other people, not at all. I mean, I don't ever want something bad to happen to people, or I don't want people to lose their jobs and all these other things, but I also don't want people to keep getting hurt. And so it's just this very neutral space of some of those girls that maybe didn't have my back, just having compassion and forgiveness and choosing to let it go very authentically, and not just saying that I was going to let it go, but really trying to actively choose forgiveness. And when I would think about them or I would let it consume my thoughts, really trying to catch myself and stop myself and decide that they weren't going to occupy my thoughts. They weren't going to occupy my space and my time. And I was going to try to reclaim NC State in a different way and move on, and truly just moving on and being forgiving. And my family was actually really played a huge role in me even speaking, because part of me wanted to just spill it and part of me wanted to just be known and have people understand. And they were really vital in saying, take a year and sit with it and heal, because you don't want to speak while you're still healing. If you want to speak productively, speak in a way that's going to help other people. Don't just bring your problems to the table, bring a solution to the table. And then after a year, I even realized I wasn't healed enough to do that. And so taking that time to just be quiet and also choose to notice all the people that were supporting me. I mean, my professors, my doctors, my parents, I had a lot of amazing, incredible people around me that I could choose to focus on instead. And choosing to be so grateful for them instead of frustrated for what I had lost. I think just the gratitude and the faith and the forgiveness and choosing to focus on those things on a daily basis as much as I could really just healed me completely and helped me to work through that emotional frustration and all those things and just choose. I wanted to be a grateful person. I didn't want to stay frustrated. So the best way for me to do that was just try to do a daily practice of being more grateful and more thankful for my health and my resources and my life rather than upset at what I had lost.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really powerful and beautiful. And I think I just want to bring out a couple of the things that you said that I just want to emphasize because I think there's such good wisdom and life lessons here for everybody. But like when those kinds of things happen, just like that awareness, like to recognize, okay, this is happening. This is taking up more headspace and drama than I want to give it. Like I don't want to give my time to that. And then redirecting it to something else. And not choosing not to give it the headspace. I think that's so important. And then I love that choosing gratitude and faith and forgiveness. And I think that, those are what heal. I love that you said that, like, those are the things that allowed you to have that full healing. That's huge. And I think with the forgiveness piece, like that's hard. That's so hard. And I imagine that your faith was probably a key part of that. I think, at least for me, I know, like I like giving it to God. Like that's how that forgiveness and that peace can come in. So I think, I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just, it definitely was giving all of it to God for sure. And just, I think that was the thing is when I felt like I was broken and lost, my identity and all those things, like I still felt such full love from God. And I had even just come to him with some questions and it was like, how can you love these people and me at the same time if they hurt me? And how does, why do these keep happening to me? Am I supposed to learn something? And a lot of those questions that even when I was wrestling with them, like just to bring them to him. And even if I didn't like find an answer, I just felt that overwhelming peace and love and knew that my life was going to be richer through forgiveness and knew I could receive that from him and be able to extend that grace to other people. And so, my faith was the biggest part of my healing. So I just love that you asked that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that and bringing that out. And I love that your questions were how and what instead of why.
Yeah.
And not that we get answers to all of them anyway, but I think those are more productive questions. So beautiful. So speaking of amazing things, I really did love your speech and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And it was just, I know that it's touched lots of people. It went viral. So I think, one of the major unsettling things about concussions is that people, like you had mentioned, feel a loss of identity as their ability to fulfill their typical roles and responsibilities is significantly diminished. And your speech was so powerful and addressed that point so beautifully. So I would love for you to tell us more about dropping labels, which is one of the things that you talked about in there, and the 3 things that you focus on to describe people. So, and that kind of goes along with, how did you go about discovering and loving yourself post-concussion? I think if we can wrap all of that up, I would love to hear your thoughts because there's just so much goodness that you shared in your talk. So
yeah, no, thank you. Of course. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you to say. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So I think that whole process, especially I'll go back a little bit. My identity, the faith thing that I kind of talked about again is at one point my mom had said to me, I was just being really brutal to myself and my lack of abilities and just feeling like I wasn't contributing anything. And she was just like constantly reminding me that I was loved anyways and like who they saw me as a person, how my family saw me, and that I was kind and that I was empathetic and almost just like reminding me of the person that I was. And then with the faith aspect of just like realizing that I was still loved regardless of what I was doing to earn, I don't know, achievements and awards and these really cool things, but that I had so much to offer to other people and to like be of service to other people through my smile and my kindness and my empathy and forgiveness and channeling that. And so I think realizing that, and then also through my work in social work, I was working with youth and just some people that have been through some really, really difficult things. And through them, I was seeing their energy and their hearts and their just resilience and their charisma, and just they were so beautiful. I mean, these girls were amazing. And realizing that they also weren't defined by the bad things that happened to them. They weren't defined by what they were achieving or not achieving. Like, they were so amazing. And almost like feeling that way about them helped me to show compassion for myself and the people that were in my corner, my family, like realizing that the reason that I loved them so much had nothing to do with their job, their resume, what they were contributing on paper, but who they were towards me during such a difficult time in my life, and how loving they were and how positive they were and optimistic. And so I was seeing these things in other people and realizing that I was also still in this competitive comparison mindset of trying to achieve all these things and do all these things. And just through the wonderful people in my life, I really started to realize that I was viewing everything wrong. I was prioritizing, and it's not that our labels are bad in any sense. It's great to celebrate accomplishments and have goals. And I mean, clearly I had a lot of goals, but I think prioritizing three things that I talk about in my speech, which is their attitude, the way that people treat others, and then what makes them uniquely beautiful and their intrinsic strengths and qualities and what they offer to the world. And so I really started to practice describing people that way and seeing people that way. And so describing I use him every single time, but I have a twin brother who lights up a room. He's so just respectful and kind, and he has this optimism and like positive attitude all the time. And he really does just make people feel so welcomed. But he also works at ESPN, which I think is so cool. And I love to celebrate him because he's awesome. And I tried to stop telling people, yeah, I have this twin brother who works at ESPN, because I wanted to describe him for who he is and his heart and his energy first, so that he knows that he's not defined by this job that he has. If that changes, whatever happens in life, if that's not the case, like, this is how I see him. And I just started to do that with my mom, with the people I was working with, and describing them to other people that way, and then seeing myself that way, and really thinking about what I could control on a daily basis and how I could just offer kindness and try to maintain an optimistic attitude and really use some of the gifts and empathy and things that I'd experienced to help other people. I couldn't really control my circumstances for a lot of that time that I was recovering. I didn't know if I could achieve the grades or achieve the, I don't know, publications or all these things that I was chasing before, but I could really truly control the kind of person that I was becoming and this new version of myself. And so that's really how I started to just heal the way I saw other people and heal the way I saw myself. And then ultimately, when I decided to give the speech about it, I really wanted other people and other graduates to feel like they could celebrate the people that they had become, because there's so much emphasis on what they're doing next and what they achieved in their 4 years. And I just wanted to celebrate people and have them celebrate themselves for just who they grew to be in their time, and maybe what they overcame, and maybe just the kindness that they showed to other people. And I don't know, just spreading that, because it truly changed my life and broadened my perspective and made my life more rich because I was seeing it in this new way.
I love it. Oh, I love it so much. And I think you put into words some things that I like have felt but haven't conceptualized like that. So I love that, the piece about like seeing these people who've gone through really hard things, and just knowing and realizing that the things you love about them and your family and others it's not the accomplishments that they have, although we love them because of who they are and how they interact. And like, it's, yeah, I love how you framed it, and like being very intentional about how you choose to think about others and how you choose to speak about others. I think that makes all the difference. And I think you mentioned it in your speech as well, but we're human beings, not human doings. So
Yes.
to recognize that, especially in this context of with concussion, so many times people lose their doings. They're not able to do the things, or at least not able to do them like they used to. And that's really challenging. And so if we can come step back and see, okay, what is, my friend Leah Davidson has an analogy that she likes to share with people about, and she works with people with brain injuries as well. And she said that, a lot of times, I hope I get this right. She talks about our roles and the things like the labels. It's like they're all in our shopping cart. Like we're pushing a shopping cart. It's us pushing something out external to us, and that's what all of these things are. And when we think that those are who we are, then when things get stripped away from us, we have nothing. We feel like we have nothing. But to remember, like, those are external things to us. These are things that we do, and not who we are. Like, we are still the person pushing the shopping cart, and even if it dumps over, like, we can refill it with the other things, but like, we are still there and good and important. So I
like that. Yeah.
It's a being thing, not a doing thing, which is so hard to remember in our world and society is very much focused on those outside labels and accomplishments, which there's positive things about that too, but we want to focus on the things that are truly important. So I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay. So is there anything, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to yourself early in the days of your injury?
Oh, such a good question. I would give myself the advice of just having more compassion for myself and telling myself that I'm not crazy and that the emotional symptoms are real and it's not my fault. And it's still my responsibility to work on them and overcome them and work through them, but that just I'm not crazy and that it's going to be okay. Just like having compassion for myself. I wish I wasn't so harsh. And I think that really delayed my recovery for a little bit when I was being so hard on myself for all of those things instead of just accepting them and doing my best to work through them, but understand that it wasn't all on me.
Yeah. It sounds like you want to be the friend to yourself that you wish you had from other people as well.
Yeah.
That's good advice for everybody always. And I think it's important that you mentioned like that self negativity can actually delay the progress. And again, it's so much easier to say than to do. And I get that, but like accepting and loving is the way to move forward and progress. And so we'll just throw it out there. So if people are hearing it right now, like just give some consideration to it. It's, again, I know it's easier said than done, but I think that's beautiful advice to give yourself.
Yeah, well, and just that it takes time. Like it just takes time, and like your goals doesn't have to be fully better and I don't know, doing school or doing your job and like feeling like yourself, like little micro goals, like celebrating the little wins, little steps of getting better is so important too.
Yeah. So good. Thank you. So how are you doing today? Are there things that you're still dealing with? What keeps you going?
Oh, I'm doing so great today. I really appreciate you asking. I'm doing so well. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm the happiest that I've been ever. And I'm very blessed. I made a almost full recovery. There's definitely still things that I deal with as far as pain. Like it's frustrating, when I exercise, I get headaches or I still have neck pain and nerve pain, and that can be aggravating, but in the grand scheme, I really have made a great recovery. Sometimes when I get stressed or tired, I feel that brain fog, or I tell my family like I have brain glitches and I don't feel like I work at the same speed as I used to, but for the most part, I really am healed and recovered. And I'm so grateful for that. And so I think what keeps me going, of course, is my faith and just feeling like I now have this gift almost of being able to talk to other people. And even just in sharing my story, it's so beautiful that the people that have shared theirs with me through that. And I had no idea that there could be such beautiful connection between people in that way. And so I think what keeps me going is just that my faith and my family, because I love them so much. And then just how I can help other people, because I just feel like I've been so blessed to be on the other side of this. And even having gone through it, I feel blessed because I feel like I can just talk to people. And I'm so humbled when they choose to share things with me. And so there's a lot of good things that keep me going right now.
I love it. I love the light. People can't see you right now, but you just exude light. I think they can probably hear it.
Oh, thank you.
It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, I love that. And I guess you kind of have answered this, but if there's anything else you want to add to it, how have you maintained hope through this recovery journey?
Oh, yeah. I think I would definitely say my faith. And I think having been through some difficult things before and knowing that I made it out the other side, even though it took longer than expected, I feel like I'd seen that play out before. And so I kind of just kept hope. Like I would imagine myself as happy, or I would imagine myself healthy. And I kind of created this like vision of what I really wanted to get to. And I kept hope that way by like imagining myself there and knowing that it wouldn't happen in a month or 2 months or 3. It would probably happen in a year, but almost like having hope for this person that I could become again if I tried my best to recover and really put effort into recovering. And then just my faith in God, and just, I don't know, just having hope that, I don't know, that I would heal. And I feel like it's better to have hope than to not. And so even if I didn't feel it on some days, I just tried to force it and fake it till I make it by having hope, because it's just better than not believing that I could get better. And I think it just helps you believe you can get better, and then it really contributes to actively seeing yourself improve and progress. And so, yeah.
I know, that's beautiful. It is hard, I think, because you had mentioned, people saying maybe this is permanent this time, and like for your family too, like things are different this time. What is it going to look like? That can be so scary and nebulous, and you just don't know what the future is going to hold. And so holding on to that vision of what you're hoping and working towards and believing that it's possible allows that forward movement to happen. I think that's,
Yeah.
if you don't, then what's the point? Like, why keep trying, right? Like I think that it is so important. And I appreciate that you mentioned the faking it till you make it, because I'm sure there are times where you don't feel it, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
I want to like let people know wherever you're at, it's okay. It's okay. But do try to like maintain at least a glimmer if possible.
Yeah. Like if I don't know how it's going to play out anyways, I might as well believe in the best possible version and positivity. Like that's going to help me the most. So
yeah,
well.
I love that. Yeah, that's so good. And that's something that I learned from, I don't know if you've heard of Jody Moore. I really like, she's a life coach that I like the way that she phrases things, but she talks about, giving equal airtime. Our brains are supposed to protect us, and they're like constantly on the lookout for danger and like what could go wrong. And so that's the natural way for our brains to go. But if we can like intentionally give, like, the future is unknown, we really don't know like how it's going to play out. So yes, we can maybe give some airtime to the potential problems and, do what we can to mitigate that. But also let's give equal airtime to the possibility that could turn out even better than we expected. And so
yeah, I like that, equal airtime.
That concept. Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that people know from you about concussions or your experience thus far? Anything that we haven't covered that you want to make sure we talk about?
Not really that I haven't covered, but I would just love to encourage anybody going through a head injury that just to be kind to themselves, and that they're strong just for continuing to overcome it. And that I just hope that anybody on the other end of the phone, the listening platform, whatever, just recovers well and heals well and feels loved and supported and not alone. And they're not crazy. So
That's so good. Thank you. So I know that we were talking about like not doing, like that doing isn't the thing that defines us, but I am very curious about what you're planning on doing. What are next steps for you? Where are you at? And how can people find you if they want to hear more from you or have you come speak or whatever?
Of course, yeah. So I'm still continuing to do motivational speaking. I've been traveling all around to do that. I do have a website. It's kelseyo'connor.net. And I'm keeping up with socials. I'm still building. So I would love for people to find me on social media. It's Kelsey O'Connor 6, O'Connor with an O-R. And then I'm actually headed back to school. So I'm getting my master's in social work at NC State and helping them to continue to build their sports social work program, some of their other programs. And it is really full circle getting to go back and get my master's degree and try to just continue to help people afterwards.
Love it. I love it. That's so cool. Okay. And actually, sorry, for the social media, is that Instagram or Facebook or where?
Instagram and TikTok.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Really did love your talk and love getting to know you today. I think that what you've experienced, you have a gift for expressing it and turning it positive and seeing the good in it. So I appreciate sharing all of this. And I think it will be really helpful for people. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. This was so great. Thank you.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.